Imagine a world where more women have the time to fully explore their genius. Welcome to She Rebel Radio, the UK's podcast for women leaders and founders ready to unlearn conventional rules and lead their businesses of significance. Hailed for counter-status quo ideas and a whole dose of feminine perspective, this is our International Women's Day series, sponsored by our headline partners, NatWest. My name's Lulu Minns. I host retreats and create spaces for women leaders to explore their genius. And today, I'm going to create that same space right here for you on this podcast. Welcome to episode 109 of She Rebel Radio. Embrace the Sacred with Annabelle Nicholl. Annabelle is the founder of the Garden of Alchemy in Sussex, which facilitates ceremonies and sessions using the earth's sacred medicines of kambo, cacao, and other healing plants. Following her calling as a medicine woman, Annabelle now runs the business with her partner, Martin Ostis, and shares her incredible gift of tuning in, seeing, and understanding the interconnectedness of all things. Supporting her clients to upgrade their systems to hold more love, empowerment, and responsibilities to serve. I've undertaken several of Annabelle's ceremonies myself, and it's an honour to hold this sacred space with you here today.
Hi, Lulu. Yes, such a lovely introduction. Yeah, I'm well.
Good. It's amazing to have you and to be in this space with you. Now, your calling is as a medicine woman working with the power of plants. Mm-hmm. How did that journey unfold for you?
I was asking why from a young kid, and then I ended up in kind of primal therapies and more head-based psychotherapy modalities in my early 20s, and that led into a need to get into more body-based tools just for my own self. Mm-hmm. I trained as a facilitator of the work of Byron Katie, which was a kind of inquiry-based system, and then I went into a tantra practice where I started to work with energy and blocked sexual energy, and being Irish, that was a massive feat. And then I ended up studying an esoterical training called human design. And then I had a dive into working with plant medicines and master plant medicines. And it was actually on two of my plant medicine journeys that I was really shown that I had to assimilate all that I'd learned and start practicing to create what we've now created. So.
Yeah, beautiful. Which plant, I guess, kind of started opening that up for you?
Kambo was definitely the first one. I think that's why I became a facilitator of it, and why I serve it, and I'm very passionate about it. And then I moved into working with ayahuasca and mushrooms, and yeah, I've probably had them all by now, but they were the door openers for me.
Yeah. And kambo with a K, for those that don't know. And yeah. What is kambo?
Kambo is a secretion from a frog in the Amazon, which sounds really awful. And if you told me that I'd ever do this as a career, I would have laughed. So it is not a psychedelic, as in you're not tripping. You don't, there's not an altered reality. You're quite here when you do it. It's a short process, like 20 to 40 minutes, but we put a lot of ceremony around it. And basically, it is this peptide-rich, immune-boosting, magical medicine that was discovered by a shaman who actually drank ayahuasca to figure out how to heal a sick village in the Amazon. And then he had this crazy download to go and take a secretion off a frog, because there's no other way you would be able to figure that out. To burn, you do these tiny little burns with an incense stick on your skin into the lymphatic system. Mm-hmm. And basically it works kind of on two things. It's a massive cleansing, purifying medicine. So it's purgative. You fast on the day, you drink 1.5 liters water before and then during your session, and you're basically dumping a lot of toxins. On a physical level, you're having a huge detox, but it also works as a multidimensional medicine. And what I mean by that is it works on the emotional, physical, and spiritual levels. So it's, for me, nothing is quite as fiery and fast as working with kambo. Really activates, for those of you who understand the chakra system, it activates the solar plexus, which is the part of us. It's like, where am I going in my life? And it removes a huge amount of fear from the system. So I know myself through working with kambo that when fear is not present, we're pretty much at our optimal selves. So it just creates windows of energies to be able to really go, okay, where am I going? What am I doing?
Mm.
And on another level, it gives us a massive natural immune boosting, peptide rich secretion that just helps keep us healthy and vital and alive. And yeah, and it was with kambo that I saw my life exponentially speed up and my path become really clear. So
yeah, beautiful. Now, so many nuggets of wisdom as always with you, Annabelle. You said and I've done kambo with you. I don't mind sharing that on She Rebel. I'm sharing all sorts on this series, but I'm opening that up with you said you wrap that in ceremony as you do with all the plant medicine that you undertake with your clients. Why is that important?
mm. Mm. So we are, as a culture, very used to giving our power away to an external source. So when there's something wrong with us or we don't know what to do, we go to a doctor or a teacher or whatever it is, and we ask them to help us, fix us, whatever. What ceremony does is it brings the autonomy and self-responsibility back into the individual. So it creates a container for us to slow down and go inwards for our resourcing versus externally. So there are tools and practices and different things around ceremony that help create that shift between more of a nervous energy that would tend to give our power away versus this kind of seated in our body, being able to trust ourselves. And, for me, kambo ceremony is the gateway into the present. And when you're present, which really should be our default as a species, that's where everything happens. So unfortunately, life really is a ceremony, but we have to practice ceremony to reestablish our relationship in the world. So I see that if we were fully integrated, fully healed beings, ceremony would just be life, but we have to somehow go in, and it's like a practice, like going to the gym. The more you sit in ceremony, the more you're able to learn to self-navigate, listen to your intuition, hear yourself, know what's best for yourself. So that is why.
Yeah, sorry. As you said, society, encourages us to go to the external instead of the internal and our inner resources. And I love how you've tied that into the power of ceremony. Do we, as women, and we talk about the feminine on She Rebel, we've been celebrated for a whole dose of feminine perspective, and again, deepen that journey for ourselves and our listeners. As women, as the feminine energy, as it is, have women been the gatekeeper traditionally to assisting people to insource?
I mean, what comes to me when you say that is like, you just need to look at the fact that we're womb bearers. Yeah. So the first thing we do is we carry life in our womb. And that's very much the first ceremony we experience, is in the womb. And we run on a menstrual cycle that aligns to a lunar cycle, which reflects in the seasonal cycles, And so I think that women's gift is to be able to really be able to work with energy that wants to move through the body, intelligence that wants to move through the body. So I think the masculine holds just as an important role as the feminine in ceremony, and within ourselves we have that masculine and feminine. What I see about women returning to empowerment is the fact that we really are the vessel holders of this higher intelligence, if you like, the kind of, we're the place where the seed drops in. Women are, even if you look at like older traditions, the women used to go into these tents and bleed, and the men would encourage it. And when the women came out, the men would be like, tell us what you got to. And then the men would implement what the women had seen. And so there's this kind of lost sense of trusting the feminine, and the feminine trusting herself,
Yeah.
because patriarchal history has played out. So, I think ceremony is a place for us women where we learn to not only trust what we can hold in ourselves, what we can create, but it's also the healing, because we've been massively violated through, even if in our own lifetimes we didn't have huge trauma, our grannies and our mothers and we live in a society that's culturally encoded with trauma.
Yeah.
And so even the healthiest of individuals will find themselves doing trauma work when they come into ceremony, because we have to do that as a collective. We have to heal. So I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, no, it totally does. Yeah, beautifully. I'm always, hooked on your words of, interweaving all of that, and, always have an explosion of other questions then that I may forget by the time that we come round. But, with that, and I know we're in agreement on this, and we may have touched on it already, with the external world being quite coded on fear, which, when I left, legal practice in the corporate world, really started to have a deep understanding of that. And then seeing it explode in the collective, as we have done over the last 3 or 4 years. And, we enter the 4th kind of winter of discontent. How do we start to shift and move through that fear? I think as a collective, but also us as women, as you said, our ancestral history, whether we've experienced that in this particular lifetime or moment, we carry that through. And our women, see, there's lots of questions coming in here now. Has there been a rising for that in women to kind of heal what's happened to us in the past?
Yeah. So I think the healing process kind of, really mirrors the cyclical process of our seasons. So if you look at like everything in terms of cycles, which is very feminine, then when there has been massive suppression or any kind of, disvalidation of the individual or expression of themselves on any level, the first natural response through waking up from denial, of adapting to and creating coping strategies to deal with that level of suppression, is going to be anger. And anger can feel highly justified when someone has been through a very oppressive state. And that's really what we've seen with the raising of the voice, the anarchy, the protesting, the kind of needing to bring to light the darkness, and I think this is only going to increase this year and the coming years in our culture, by the way.
Yeah.
And I
hold your hats, people.
And I feel this is a part that can't be bypassed, but I don't feel it's the completion of the cycle. And I think the cycle that we're really starting to address, particularly in healing circles and stuff, is like that only takes it so far, because you're still in war. You've taken that internal suppression and you've put it into the external. And the next natural state is forgiveness. And through forgiveness, you have to have an understanding, and then there's a surrender and a letting go of what was, so there becomes space for a new structure, a new way of being. But in that surrender, there has to be a grieving, and I think this is the process our collective is about to step into. We've seen through like liberal rights and movement through it, we've seen the anger phase, we haven't seen the grief phase, and we are well overdue processing the amount of trauma that's been held. And so with the grief process comes a sense of, I don't know, I'm not in control, I'm just going to just let freaking go. And that feels scary, because that's the movement of letting go of the structures of our mind, the ego deaths, the re-identification. It's the death and rebirth, because then really, if that letting go is the autumn of our lives, then we hit winter. And winter is the deep nothingness, it's the stillness. But in reflection to women, it's where we bleed. And where we bleed is where we go deep into the womb of the earth. We go deep into nothingness. And that is only when the spark or the seed of spring can create a new cycle again. And so I see that we're all slightly different where we're at in each month and each cycle, but it's often really good to think about, like, where am I in the cycle of my life, and where is the collective, and where is what is needed. And so often my ceremonies, I feel like on some level, my traumas and my own life has often given me my own internal processes just on a slight edge before the collective needs it. So my current training is as a death doula, because this is something I'm really interested in, because I feel that working with plant medicines has often taught me that if we don't work with the shadow, if we don't work with the letting go, if we don't work with our fear of death, like coming back to your fear question, we will perpetually be terrified as a species. And you can see that already. And so part of my curiosity in undergoing this training is to bring about potential grief practices, rituals, to help people learn how to discharge this energy healthily, so that they don't have to end up in situations where they have to get divorced, or a health issue, or something has to manifest in their life to get them to that point. Because I think that's the thing. We play victim a lot to our reality, but my belief system working with this medicine is we are choiceful beings, and we are choosing the whole lot, which is hard for people to digest. I'm not saying what happened to them should be condoned, but on some levels, it is our deepest wounds that end up being the fertile soil to our deepest gifts. And so if we can understand and shift our perspective, and that's where ceremony can help a lot. Like, okay, my system just needs to let go, I need to cry. Kambo is such a good one for that. It just helps move the emotions. What happens is I get out of this dualistic thinking of right and wrong and good and bad, because the mind can only play with the two poles of reality, and then you need to go into the body, you need to go into the heart, you need to go into the energetic field of life to transcend that little battle that's just going to constantly ensue for the end of time. And that will ultimately end war within yourself. And when war ends within ourselves, it ends within those around us. And then we become the medicine. So it's like, we are medicine. We are self-regulating beings that have lost our ability to be, we're disconnected. And for me, the stem of all fear is disconnection.
Yeah. And I love that in terms of we become the medicine. And so often, again, going back to this kind of external focus, is we're seeing such big division in the world right now. And, when you've done this work, or some of this work, you can take a step back from that. Instead of, pointing the finger so much, it's looking at where you're at, and comparing that, as you say, your cycle with where the collective is. We can separate ourselves, but we are all connected. And that's really important work that more and more people are really, shifting and waking up to. Moving to cacao, the heart medicine. Tell us more about the power of cacao, and also how drumming really connects with cacao.
So cacao was really my first plant medicine that I worked in holding ceremony. And it's a medicine that I teach people how to hold ceremony, because it's like a kind of intro level medicine. It's not psychedelic. It's quite gentle on the system, but it can be really deep in terms of like really opening the heart. In the West, we have tend to adulterated some of Mother Nature's greatest medicines, which is mapacho, which is tobacco, and which is chocolate, cacao. And we are addicted to both of those substances in the West. And ironically, cacao is about the heart, and mapacho is about presence, the masculine presence. So you could see like that connection in our deep longing and lack for masculine presence and opening of heart space is there in our addiction field. So when we go back to people like, oh, it's just chocolate, we're just drinking chocolate. But these cacao trees, the cacao we use in ceremony, it's a whole food. So there's no adulteration happen. The chocolate industry, I think it's like 14% of cacao powder to make a chocolate bar is the legality.
Right.
The temperatures are heated way up, so all the nutrients are destroyed in it. The trees are genetically modified. They're pretty dead of everything. And then all the fat is taken out, which is actually really good for you. And it just becomes full of laced with sugar, so it becomes highly addictive. And so people don't actually have had the experience of drinking or being with proper chocolate, and it's a completely different experience. And so these cacao plants that work in ceremonial and the ones we get, we work with a cacao from Ecuador. They're indigenous forest trees that haven't been messed with, that have been around for hundreds of years. And the Mayans, they were the original ones to put this as medicine. And the kind of proof is in the pudding. It's like hard for me to explain until you've had an experience of working with cacao. And it also depends how tuned in you are, because a lot of people are just only able to stay in their heads and not like feel, how is this affecting my body or my thoughts or my experience? But what I like to say is, like, when I drink cacao, my ego takes a step outside and my better self takes a step inside. So I always love the feeling in a cacao ceremony when everyone's had the cacao and it's really gone in deep, because I feel like it's not about me being the medicine woman and you being the participants. Like, this is the way our hierarchy structure. It's about me helping you guys come back into yourself, because you remember that you are also a medicine woman, you're also the shaman, you're also this. So then we sit in council as a community, and we're able to talk without fear, with our hearts open. And when we make decisions from our heart space, it's a game changer. It is a total game changer. The drumming aspect of it is, that's a tool that's not necessarily linked to cacao. It's a tool used in shamanic. It helps the binary brain beats rhythm into a trance-like state. So it helps you kind of drop out of the thought mind and helps you just to journey a little bit. So I use drumming to just help people transition in spaces, do a lot of work. Teaching people, this longest journey in the world is this 12 inches from your head to your heart, which you've probably heard that phrase before. But it really is. And the thing is that people, even though you can logically give them reason by following a heart-centered life is a far superior life, what it means to follow a heart-centered life is courage. Because our system is not set up to trust that, but you have to reason and you have to have intellect. But I know, as someone who lives this, I do not make any decisions from fear. I have only made decisions through my heart for particularly the last 5 years. And my life increases to get more abundant, more happy, more connected, more purposeful. And it doesn't make sense. Like, I couldn't give you the manual for that. I just can really help you get into your heart, and you have to experience that for yourself. But in that processing, you have to look at your fears. You have to decondition the shadows that lock you into limiting belief systems that say, well, that's unrealistic and that's okay for some. And well, what are we going to do with our current climate? Because I can be in the middle of a coronavirus and everyone is suffering around me and I'm having a great time. So, we can be that eye of the storm. We understand how to stay connected to our hearts, how to allow that grief to overflow when we need to clean our vessel, how to release that anger when we are bringing new awareness up into the field. These are processes. It's about how to manage our internal energy fields and take self-responsibility that we are self-healing, self-regulating beings that have lost our capacity to do that because we've become dependent on an external system that will suppress us rather than awaken us. So this is my drive behind the work that I do.
Yeah, beautiful. And I've done a few 2 cacao ceremonies with you, one only last month, and it was a very I could just feel it in my body. My mind, I could feel energy moving up within my body. And one of my favorite quotes, and has been, ever since I've been on my journey, as it were, is Einstein. We live in a world that values the rational mind and has forgotten the sacred gift. What is that sacred gift?
Yeah. And I just want to add one on, that you cannot heal something from the same level of consciousness that it was created on, is also what it is. I don't know. It's been coined as, he gets coined for all of them.
I know. And he couldn't have come up with all of them. There must have been a woman there somewhere.
So then what cacao, linking back in cacao, like this beautiful, I mean, we have these hearts, we talk about love, we all say we want love, we all want to be in love, we all want to feel love, like that's thing on our deathbeds, how did I love, who loved me, was I loved, did I love, that's at the end of the day, if you strip everything away, that's the most important thing. And yet we don't give that authority in our lives. We give our rational mind. Now, who cares how intelligent we are and how much we remembered and how smart we were? No one cares about that on our deathbed.
No.
What we care about is how much we were able to access love. And so this journey actually becomes this, like, initially I help people a lot, like, use the mind to be smart enough to direct the intelligence into the body, because the body has a far superior intelligence field. I mean, they're already proving that with gut intelligence, but the heart is also an intelligence. It's hard for our rational minds to think that the heart is intelligence, because we associate intelligence with the mind, with the brain.
Yeah.
It's a dualistic thinking. It's got a platform for us to compare things on, like science lives in that realm. When you go into the heart, you are literally going into an intelligence that is far superior. And to be able to work with that intelligence, you have to let go of figuring it out.
Yes,
you can't understand it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you start to live life from the heart-centered place, which is back into that childlike sense of wonder and curiosity and trust and unfolding, and
and more in the moment, isn't it?
More in the moment.
Harder and harder to plan.
Mm-hmm. And then the mind, it's not pointless, like it's not there just sitting on the top of our shoulders as just this thing to show. The purpose of our mind is an entertainment system, and it's also a recording system. So as we go through our experiences in life, as we live them through our heart, as we connect with that love, as we have those moments, then the mind can define that and communicate that with other people.
Yeah, beautiful.
So the greatest intelligence comes not before, but after a lived experience. And that's where it's so hard in our society to let go, because we're so like, I've got to have a plan, I've got to have a strategy, I've got to figure it out. But it's like, you can't really,
Yeah. And then there's this little niggle of your heart going, what about me?
And I do plan and strategize, but I think that planning and strategize comes from have lived through an experience and then assimilated the intelligence of that experience and then created something into the world. And I don't know if that comes across, but it's often where we're coming from versus what we're doing that is the issue. And so because everything's embedded in the frequency of where we created that original thing, it is so important that we make our decisions based in love. When we make, and that's not always easy to
no.
But when we make a decision based in love, we're literally planting a seed that can only flourish into a plant of love, or a relationship of love, or a business of love. Whereas if we make that decision from fear, I don't have enough money, I'm just going to go and do this, I'm going to sacrifice, I'm going to compromise, guess what happens? We just keep that plant, just ends up never really feeling like a satisfying choice in our lives. We feel burdened by that, we feel trapped by that, we feel controlled by that. And so to break free, we have to have the courage to follow the heart.
And it's, it's either we're feeding the plant of fear or feeding the plant of love, and the distinction is, and having that conscious conversation with yourself is like, where is this coming from at the root is so key. You talk about the body being a vessel, trauma, wounding lives in the body. You've shared some of the plants that you use with us. How do we start or increase to clear out that vessel to make the space for more love, for more heart? And how can our listeners maybe bring a little bit of the sacred into every day?
Well, I think the answer is the same as the question. It's both. So by having a practice is the way you're going to do this, in my opinion. Just like we need to eat and we need to go to the gym and we need to sleep every time. There are certain conditions for human beings to thrive in. And the one we're missing is a self-reflective practice. We don't sit with ourselves. We don't allow ourselves to connect with what is currently going on for me in this moment. So a practice is as simple as sitting with yourself, taking a couple of breaths and literally turning the gaze inwards. How am I feeling right now? what's going on right now. It's actually, we're so on autopilot the whole time, we don't actually even ask ourselves, how am I feeling right now, until that feeling becomes an overbearing, all-consuming emotion. And so it's our responsibility to get quiet. And in that getting quiet, in that like not needing to change anything, just a literal being able to go, how am I right now, as a practice, allows permission for whatever is existing to exist. And that is the first step. We cannot change anything until we love what it is first. We can't forgive anything until we love what it is. And that's the piece, you know, the Byron Katie work that was so taught to me. So the first thing is, can I just hold space for myself to have an experience of exactly what's going on, without the mind going, well, you shouldn't, you should, that's not okay, that's good, categorizing it into different departments. It is what it is. And can you have the courage to just get curious? And it can be as simple as, how's my physical body, scanning head to toe? How's my emotional body, scanning head to toe? And then when you evolve your practice, how's my energetic body, which is a more subtler thing that takes a while to kind of increase your intelligence around that.
Yeah.
And then the next thing is, okay, can I allow, how's my mind? Am I in past or future orientated stories? You know, is it active? Can I use my breath to just go, thank you, mind, and back into the body, scanning the body? It just directs the consciousness back into the body. And developing from there the very beginnings of a meditation practice, which for some is really easy, for others it takes ages. They might need to use visualization tools. But even that process of starting to check in is a meditation in itself.
Yeah,
The
that's
first thing we've got to do is quieten the mind. And the second thing we do is we've got to open the heart.
Yeah.
And once we can quieten the mind and open the heart, what happens is the mind quietens down, and then the heart has space to open. And when the heart has space to open, it's not always pretty. That's when we can suddenly go, oh, I feel so lost. I feel so confused. I'm just in my head. I don't know. And we really catch up with the reality of where we're at. And that's when we can allow that sadness, what trapped emotion is in the body, to have place. Or we can even have space to listen. Oh, there's some inspiration coming in, or consideration. So for me, self-practice is the beginning of self-ceremony. So I teach people on, my courses how to do this. And at first it sounds a bit like, oh, that's a bit of a luxury. I'm just going to add in like 15 minutes or an hour every day to just
especially
sit.
for a lot of women as well, because they're taking on so much
by
else.
the end, they're like high priestesses channeling information like, I never thought this would happen. I work a lot with intentions. So, it's about putting a bigger, like an intention. I intend something to happen, and then sitting in that intention. So I would say the simplest thing is just to create a practice. And that's where you can get creative. It can be, you can light a candle, you can have a nice essential oil. Like, I'm all into like tools of sensual delights, like really allowing that sacred space. Because sacred space for me just means a space to come close to oneself.
Yeah.
A space to hold the heart close. And so it can be as flamboyant as a ceremony, or it can be, we have atheists, we have people who are designing AI intelligence, we have police officers. I don't just attract alternative to my practice, and I find a way for them to find a way for them that works. So this isn't about me putting my way of doing things. Like, if smokes and drumming is not their bag, what we find is, what is their bag? What is the thing that's going to give them a space to be able to process?
Yeah, it's that trust piece again, isn't it? Is people tuning into what works for them and what doesn't. And I know for me, when I first started meditating, some 7 years ago, etc., the emotion and things like that came up was huge. And we can spend a lot of time avoiding that and not even knowing what it is when it comes up. But as you say, so important there. And I think a lot of the personal development world misses is bringing presence to it, bringing love to it. Thank you. What 3 things are you going to be embracing in the year ahead, or should we as a collective be embracing? What comes up for you?
Yeah, so I feel like change. Well, change is one of my, that, what is it they say? Change is the only definite thing there is. Be with change. Learning how to really get resilient and adaptable and flexible means not being scared of the different states of being that might arise in the system. But most people, when big emotions and stuff start to come into their life, they're like, what the fuck is this? I can't be with this. You know, I need to freak out. Something's wrong with me. And if, you know, like you said, like there's nothing wrong with you. It's that there has to be this kind of purging, releasing, clearing. For every time I do deep shadow work, like I go into the depths of my pain, literally a couple of weeks later, if not sooner, in will come the most joyous part of my life. You know,
the highs get higher. You deal with the lows. Yeah.
And the lows get lower, but the resilience gets stronger. And the trust in it all also gets stronger. So when you start, I think there was an interview in America that said, you know, they asked the average American how many emotions they had. And I couldn't believe this when I heard this. It was like 3 emotions was the average. And they were happy, sad, and mad. You know?
Oh, God. I was going to say 3 probably for the average. And I think the real clue is going through things as well, isn't it? You know, we have to go through. You can't bypass.
Yeah. And so I wrote down this morning, I was thinking about these 3 things, and I was thinking then the other one I really like is I actually I just did some my overall intention and practice for this year is, you know, the art of holding. What does that mean to hold myself, like in my practice, in my self-care, in my self-responsibility, and to be full and whole before I hold another. So rather than this kind of unprocessed wounded healer that's still in process, how can I like dance between that and teach people how to give as much work to the holding of self as to the holding of others. We spend so much time holding of others in our pleasure orientated, and we haven't held ourselves. And it's the same energy bandwidth. I want to go to a practitioner who I look at their lifestyle and I'm like, this girl knows how to self-care. You know, because I know she will be so resourced that then when she gives me love, I will feel so held by that love. And now I'm going to a practitioner that's in poverty consciousness, struggling all the time. I'm not going to have someone fully there present. So
yeah, and I think if being a practitioner as well, you've got to know when to take a step back because you've got other stuff. You know, you're either processing something deep or you've got something, you know, going on. You need to be responsible in that.
And my third word for this year, which actually came from a beautiful, I hope she's listening, I'll send her this podcast. So she had her and her family come for a bespoke cacao ceremony to share her story of growing up in Colombia. And she hadn't fully shared her whole itty gritty story with her family because she wanted to protect them, and they were now young adults. And it was, so she was sharing her story. And then after she shared the story, each of the children, we had this kind of love bombing thing where they were able to share a memory or something they loved about their mother to really just like force that vulnerability. And one of the things the children kept repeating was this gift that their mother had, which was even when they walked down the road, their mother would stop and go, oh, look at that lovely flower growing out of the crack. Or look at the way the design on the dustbin has made this pretty face. You know, her capacity to notice the details. And then they said how their friends compliment them on that as a gift as well.
Oh, beautiful.
And I left that ceremony so inspired by that as a practice to notice the little things. And I just thought, I just want to really make that an intention this year, just to notice the little things, the little moments where I get present and I hear the bird song, or the way the light falls on the ground, or the way it feels when I hug my daughter, because really that's all it's about. You know, that is the ultimate abundance, you know, is to notice what we have. And I think that's where, you know, the striving for more and capitalistic, you know, achievement, even within the egoic self, I've got to be the best. And it stops us noticing the beauty of this reality of who we are, of that there's enough, you know?
Yeah, and I was going to say that is presence, isn't it? And I think, and as you said, embracing change is another of your work. One of your words and things that you're going to be embracing is when things start to change. if we regret anything, it's not being present when things were as they were, that's when we really miss stuff and we're absent from it. So noticing those, and I love how also that story shared how we pass down sacred gifts, to children or those that we're around, and really, really pass that through in showing that oneness between us as a collective as well. So Annabelle, what is next for you, and where can we find you at the Garden of Alchemy?
So there's my website, gardenofalchemy.com, and we're only on one social platform because I kind of can't handle the technological world that well, which is Instagram, which is garden_of_alchemy. And we have a newsletter as well that goes out on our website. So where we're at is we've kind of got a nice little rhythm now. I work with my partners, so we kind of do a lot of long weekend retreats, and then we have a lot of bespoke work. So that's kind of tailored around individuals. And then we run courses occasionally. So I'm just going to launch a new course for October-ish, which is going to be a 12-week program divided into 2 6-week modalities, which is on this theme of holding and held. I've had a lot of requests from people wanting trainings, like how do I hold space? And I've just seen like all the stuff that's out there, and I'm like, I'm not really the kind of person to give you a manual on this. What I can do is I can help you activate your own self-care practice and to be able to trust that that is going to release your gifts, and if you can authentically be that in the world. So that's what I've designed, which I'm really excited about.
Holding this incredible sacred space. I know our listeners are going to get so much out of this episode and listen back to bits and pull out those nuggets of wisdom. It's been amazing to have you.
Yeah, thank you so much, dear sister. So lovely to sit in this little ceremony of radio, whatever this is, podcasty life.
Love it. You've been listening to She Rebel Radio. We thank you for listening and thank our headline partners NatWest for sponsoring this series. If this episode has inspired you, please pass it on and share with at least one other incredible woman, and don't forget to hit subscribe and leave us a review. You can find out more about me and my work at luluminns.com or on most social media platforms.